Hello everyone, my name is Luneat and welcome back to the second part of this mini-series where I talk about all of the Drawtobers I've done this year. We'll actually jump right into it today. You can check through my video history to see the previous part. With that, let's get started. So by week 2, I've gotten more comfortable with just drawing and maintaining this system daily. And I wanted to start exploring some more, start experimenting some more. Lots of it was I finally felt more comfortable to work with all the colors that were given in each of the swatches. And for day 8's theme, Fiji, it just felt really perfect to do something beach themed. I went with Desai. I just want him to be amongst the waves and Chuya going to find him. This was such a beautiful shade of aqua that I couldn't pass the opportunity to use them for waves. And the waves aren't something that I've often worked with in the past, and it's something that I've struggled with plenty of times. I just could never get like the foam looking right. But I figure these Drawtobers are meant to be a moment where I can experiment without any fear and can just like go ham, try out all sorts of ideas without the pressure. So I'm like, why not? Let's just jump straight in and we'll figure it out as we go. And if we mess up, there's no trouble. I actually found my savior in the form of the Tamar paintbrush. I mentioned this in my previous video when I was working on October's coffee print, and using it then was the result of experimenting with it in this current drawing. It has such a beautiful texture, and that very texture helps provide me with the exact foam effect that I've been searching for all of this time. I'm definitely going to be using this brush a lot more in the future. The main challenge I found out while working on this drawing was figuring out how deep I wanted Desai to be in the water, whether there should be any sand present at all. I really wanted him to essentially float in it and find a way to have Desai look grounded enough in the water doing so. Ultimately, after trying different variations of water to sand ratio, I found that that meant making it deep enough for the sand to not really be visible unless it's under really shallow areas of the water. It's basically a smidgen, but essentially that meant I could hide Chuya's feet amongst the waves and avoid drawing toes in perspective, basically. Yes! Everything came together so beautifully once I added the shadows and the main source of light. It's one of my favorites of this batch, and I have it now as my iPad home screen. Somehow I was so hung up about the name of this color swatch. It was called Tent Blue. I'm most definitely butchering the title, and I wholeheartedly apologize for that. Somehow I just kept on seeing it as a more, it's technically blue, but I saw more gray than blue in it. I guess if we're talking semantics, I saw it as a cool tone gray, which the blue would fall under that to a degree. I was at a complete loss on how I wanted to draw this. Like, the title didn't really give me any inspiration, and the color, I was like, okay, I just think of misty mornings. That's all I could think of. And I'm like, okay, we'll do Dragon AU Drawing 2.0 and just have it angsty soft boy moments in the morning where there's no one else in sight and it's just them in the world, you know? You're definitely gonna get a lot of that in the future days. It's something that I fall back on, a bit too much than I should be, but it's really something that I enjoy drawing for all time, and having Chuya and Desai's relationship and dynamics with each other like that, it just makes it so easy to brainstorm an unlimited amount of scenarios where they're just like this all the time, anytime. Like, heck, I drew the Reprieve drawing all those years ago when I first joined the fandom. That says a lot about what really resonated with me when I first came across these two. So while I really haven't been drawing Hurt Comfort as of lately, I will take the opportunity whenever it presents itself. I'll take any chance I can get. So I wholeheartedly apologize in advance if you ever come across me just like in the full-on like Hurt Comfort mentality and just binge drawing on that. Focusing on the concept of like the misty morning, I wanted to keep the shading as minimal as possible. Just have it feel very desaturated and feeling very faded, almost mirage-like. Overall, it took me much longer to brainstorm the concept and get the rough sketch out than it actually took me to get the coloring, rendering, and shading done. Desert Coral. It's such a vibrant color, and I can't but always help it that I want to associate such a color with Chuya. So I made him as the focus for this drawing. And because of the tone of red, I just wanted to do something that feels kind of, I don't know what the best way to describe it. Lethal, kind of dangerous, not outright, but just more menacing. The closest word that I can associate the mood that I have in mind is intimidating. And the beast versions of Design Chuya would fit that vibe completely. Chuya, who's always watching his boss's back, you know? That's a specific moment that I wanted to portray. I think the big challenge for this one was just figuring out what kind of color for overall tone that I wanted to go with, since the red was already so vibrant on its own. In order to make Design Chuya stand out as much as that red, I had to really make them contrast in color. I upped the saturation on them, making their skin more magenta and blue in some parts, and half their suits ended up being turquoise and black, which really showed up nicely against the red. There's a lot of pre-planning and color correcting in this one before I really delved into the rendering stage. I wanted to make sure that all the colors are completely locked in, otherwise they wouldn't come out as precisely as how I'd want them to. Although I encountered a completely different dilemma that was very unexpected. I encountered a bit of a dilemma trying to draw Chuya's expression, especially in his eyes. My usual way of rendering them wouldn't quite fit the mood for this specific drawing. I actually think that my sketch did a better job at portraying the specific emotion I wanted rather than the final rendered version. You know, it's just like that disjointed feeling you get when you transition from sketch to line art. At the beginning, you create a sketch that's just perfect and exactly how you'd want it. The sketch is vibrant and almost feels like it will come alive and just jump out of the page. However, when you decide to start adding in the line art, everything just ends up looking so stiff and lifeless, and you wonder where you go wrong between the two steps. It kind of feels like that, honestly, but I do find that when I'm stuck and really hung up on one specific detail, I ultimately need to take a step back and move on to the next thing that I need to sketch or render. Problem solving different things further down the line from the one that you're really stuck on can give you more solutions. Like, it can give you more ideas and solutions in how you can fix what's bothering you. But other times, it just makes you realize that what you already have set up is doing the job that you're looking for, and sometimes you're just hyperfixating. You know, essentially a good break from what's bothering you so that you can gain a fresh perspective on things. And at the end of this, I just played around with a lot more lighting, trying to see if I can just up the saturation even more, or if that's like reaching overkill. I added more shadows just to make it more dramatic in feel. And after making some final color corrections, we were able to then wrap this up and jump onto the next color swatch. This day is another one that ended up becoming one of my most favorites that I've done all month long. Initially, I was a bit stuck in what I wanted to draw. I definitely wanted something to do with the time of day again. I sketched out quite a few ideas, initially thinking of something about Dazai or Chuya waking each other up in the early morning in the pale sunlight, so to say, but that just felt really repetitive to what I've done in the past, and I was growing tired of drawing that. So in hopes of getting some sort of burst of inspiration, I decided to look up what the flower chamomile can represent. And looking back on it, I can't believe that I had to look it up. I drank a decent amount of chamomile tea a few years back just because I really liked the taste, and around that time, that's when I looked up its properties. I'm a bit gobsmacked, genuinely, that I completely forgot about that time. I literally drink it on a nightly basis just because I enjoyed it that much. Still can't believe I forgot it, you know? But ultimately, it did provide a good refresher on everything. I really honed in on the properties of rest and relaxation that chamomile can provide, and used those words as a springboard for this drawing. A moment where Dazai and Chuya have finished a tough mission and deserve a well-earned rest as the morning rises and bathes them in a soft glow. It's actually one of the few times during the challenge that I could describe an entire drawing in one sentence before I even begin to draw. Most of the time, I have a rough concept, like just one word or a very hazy idea, and then I start refining it as I go. I'll keep ideas that fits the concept while discarding ones that don't quite work, or slowly adjust them to mold them to fit better with the concept. Moments where I get such a clear idea is very cherished, and usually I come out of that mindset feeling very refreshed and satisfied with the end result. It's usually one of my most productive times, and I honestly wish it happens more often than not. So now Chuya and Desai are leaning against each other to get a bit of a breather before they have to go back to report everything. They're trying to get some shut-eye in this decimated room that's essentially the aftermath of their mission. Just lots of blocked out shapes with a lot of textured rendering to give off the illusion of cement and infrastructure. Actually, this pale yellow isn't a color that I would usually work with in the past, but after doing this drawing, I feel like I can rely on it some more in the future. The moment that I read Seawind as today's color swatch prompt, my mind instantly wanted to draw Pirate AU Chuya. Pirate AU Chuya is this personal AU that I did just for fun back when I participated in a Sokoku zine that was like a few years back. I fell in love with the designs that I made and have made an effort to try and draw them at least once a year ever since. Originally, I wanted to include the entire ship as the backdrop, but then as I did the rough draft, I felt that the color swatch wouldn't really provide enough space for the type of composition that I had in mind. Chuya might not really be visible amongst the ship if I were to scale anything much smaller to fit the shape of the color swatch. So instead I settled on just drawing Chuya himself in his full pirate captain glory. I felt that it would still fit closely enough with the concept for Sea Breeze. This was a very straightforward drawing. There weren't any complex steps necessary needed to reach the finished piece. Most of my time instead was spent towards making sure I rendered out all of the little details on his outfit properly and remembered them in the first place. I definitely had to go back and check my old sketches and references to see that I didn't leave anything behind. I definitely placed a lot of gilded details to his coat and his hat. I did have a lot of fun though, I admit, rendering out the feathers. Sea Breeze is another vibrant color swatch, so I made it as if Chuya is on the deck amongst the sea and sky. I ended up upping the saturation for everything and made things have more of a bluish hue to match the tone. This bluish hue is primarily applied to the shadows and his coat and hat, just to have them all blend in with the overall drawing. In turn, I decided to make his hair just a really fiery, vibrant red, just to stand out amongst the blue. The gold details will act as an accent for everything. In retrospection, I realized I accidentally ended up using the primary colors, yellow, red, and blue, for this day's color palette. It was never my intention, but that's how it turned out. In the end, blue became the dominant color for this drawing, and then the remaining two just ended up being the accents to support the blue. So, as a note to self, or for anyone who felt like they're struggling with choosing color palettes or just worried about finding colors that could work well together, feel free to pick the primary colors. They can be basic, but they're very flexible colors. You can mix them and make a whole new slew of colors. You can have them pastel or just darken them, more shades of them. There's just different ways that you can go about using the primary colors. They complement each other very well, and of course, there's a reason that they were the first colors that we learned as children. It's good to explore different color palettes, but don't be afraid to fall back on them sometimes. At this point, I went in to add some of the final touches. Tried a bit of a sword, that didn't work, but kept the gleam of it and the glimmer just to add that final spark. Day 13. I think this was the first Friday the 13th in a while, which was very interesting. Letter Gray. I wanted the focus to be on Desai this time, since I did the previous one Chuya only, so I wanted to balance that out and make sure that I don't leave one or the other two left out, if that makes sense. And somehow I wanted the color to really tie in with the name of the color swatch this time. This shade of gray, I just wanted something very dramatic, I guess so to say. It felt like it would fit Desai really well. While I was brainstorming, I ended up honing in on the word letter. and started thinking about the idea of like letters to myself or letters to oneself. We know that Dazai has a very complicated past, and it just made me kind of think, okay, what could he possibly say to his past self? Or how would he approach things with his current perspective? This drawing wasn't at all intended to reference any specific moment in the series. I just wanted to have the past self in the frame represent a moment that's already passed on, a mere memory of his past self. But having present-day Dazai still lingering around with the past that's stuck in the frame can represent a few things. One is the past is still greatly influencing present-day Dazai in his actions and choices of today. Another thing that I was thinking of while working on this is that present-day Dazai, who's kind of lingering or looming behind the frame containing his past self, in maybe a semblance of a protective, but mostly ominous and intimidating way to a viewer, contains all of the knowledge and awareness of the events that have caused the changes in growth leading to where present-day Dazai is now, and instead unbeknown to the him from the past. I'm genuinely certain that this did not make any sense at all. I already had a hazy thought in the head about this. It's even a bit more of a struggle to verbalize it as I'm explaining in the video, but this was the idea that kind of pushed me onwards with this concept, and I do hope that at least some aspects of the drawing kind of connected with that idea. Who knows? On top of that, this was actually one of the few drawings that I worked with a really desaturated color palette, which is a rarity compared to my usual favored bright and saturated colors. And we are finally on to the last one for this video, Dark Crimson. Again, I told you earlier, red I always associate it with Chuya. One of these days I need to like switch that around and see what I can do with Dazai, you know? Dazai has a lot of red colors that he can work with too. I gotta like push my brain a bit more to go out of the comfort zone. Maybe we'll make that as a drawing challenge sometime next year. What do you think? Feel free to let me know, or if you have any other suggestions in what other kind of like drawing challenges I can do, feel free to suggest those too, since I really enjoy doing them each time and am always open to hearing more about those. I did a variation to unfinished work in progress that I've had years ago. It's very unfinished. I need to go back to it soon one of these days. It's just, you know, having Chuya in the heat of battle. There's not really showing the battle around since it's facing a similar dilemma as the Pirate AU one, the Sea Breeze, where there's just not enough space in the color swatch to be able to like fit everything while maintaining the current composition that you've seen I've locked down with here. I actually used a lot of the same methods that I had when working on the Desert Coral drawing with Beast versions Chuya and Dazai. A lot of the obstacles that I faced when working on Desert Coral actually made it a lot easier to work on this one, Dark Crimson. I felt more comfortable working with the bright red colors and applying that to the skin tone and overall outfits, and I was able to figure out a way to color his eyes close enough to the kind of mood that I wanted. Desert Coral unintentionally became the stepping stone to facing the same obstacles and being able to complete them without issue in this one. It was just a really fun and good learning experience, both of them. When you're not fully satisfied with a drawing, even after completing it, like there's just details that just don't look right to you and you can't quite like complete it the way you wanted to envision in your mind, just move on sometimes. Just having that break and focusing on another drawing with its whole different set of challenges can help you solve what you've been previously stuck on. And for the finishing touches, I just place a lot of debris, bits of just like tainted sorrow affected objects, and just like the light glowing off of him, just like pure chaos all around and him thriving in it. Now, as we wrap up this video, I just want to thank everyone who's watched this far. A special shout out to my supporters on Ko-fi. It really means so much that you support Little Moonfish Ghost. The next part of this mini-series will be ready to be out soon. But until then, please take care of yourselves, and I'll talk to you next time, okay?